Chris, thank you. Thank you for being here for another episode of the Underflow podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet like this. We've been talking about it a little bit for a while, just so we can kind of catch up on camera as well as learn about what you're up to. So thanks, man.
Yeah,
So,
the second that we started this, I was like, Christian just called me. I was
oh,
like,
really? Do
can
you
I
want
call
to call
you?
him back real quick?
No, no, it's
You
fine. It's fine.
sure? I was
I'll call him after. Yeah, it's fine.
okay. Word. Yeah. I keep meaning to text him too because I still need instrumentals and stems for some of the songs I recorded with him last time I was in LA. But
It's like, yeah, that's my life. Just hitting up Christian, being like, hey man, send me
listen,
those bounces. It
listen,
sounds
I know you
awesome.
have a
Thank you.
child and real responsibilities, but can you go to the studio and sit there while you bounce out stems real
Yeah,
quick? Shout out to Christian Paul Philippi, ladies and gentlemen. Um,
he's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super grateful that you connected me with Christian, honestly. I mean, I think, our mutual friend Laidlaw had connected us, and then, you guys were recording kind of with Christian, but you had already been recording with Christian. You've been recording Coma Girls stuff with Christian for a few years now, right?
Yeah, I think I've been working with Christian for like, I mean, before COVID.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 years.
that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's already been almost 2 years that he and I have been working together too. I went to LA for the first time to record in 2023. So yeah, that's wild. I was
Didn't
listening
realize.
to the Coma Girls stuff, like the evolution of the sound earlier today, and it's really dope how every project has its own vibe and kind of like different ways it goes. So
Yeah, I like records. I like making records. So
yeah,
there's like an element of like kind of finding the pocket of a record and it should feel almost like organically cohesive.
yeah,
Um
well said.
yeah.
Yeah, obviously you must love records because you've started two bands now. As if Coma Girls isn't enough, you've got two or three records, a couple EPs, bunch of singles as Coma Girls, but now you've released the debut Hellhouse EP, 5 tracks. Beautiful work, man. Again, recorded with Christian, right? So,
Yeah, Christian did the Hell House record. We're really stoked on it. Shervon, he's a incredible drummer that yeah, he played on your record as well that you did with Christian. And me and him had kind of been talking about wanting to put a band together. There was because Coma Girls is so like it's very like personal to me, and it's very like it's not collaborative. It is with I guess Christian or whatever producer that I'm working with.
mhm.
But it's very much so like me, like Coma Girls is me, and I'm Coma Girls kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I wanted to like have a band with my friends. Like I grew up playing in bands like that, and I missed that kind of camaraderie. And also, I keep putting out all this Coma Girl stuff, and like I really wanted to do something that was kind of like heavier and very like guitar pedal based. And I just didn't want to be like, well, this is another Coma Girls record that's going in this direction, and then I'm gonna do an R&B record, and then I'm gonna, start making beats. It's just like
Right.
Coma Girls has always been kind of like everything I wanted to do, and like I didn't care about like how it was packaged necessarily, and it just kind of made more sense for this to be its own separate band, and that was intriguing to me because I haven't done that in so long.
Right. Yeah. No, that's dope that you went that way because I've always loved projects, that go in every direction, whether it's like Beck or Radiohead. And that's, same as Coma Girls is you, Quells is me, and I hope to go in every different direction, like you were saying, like beats, R&B, actual pop songs, shoegaze, whatever. I was just listening to, is this the second record or technically first full length? No Umbrella for Starflower. And that's really cool because you have a song like Knife, which is like the guitar sounds on that are just incredible, you know. And then you have a song like is it Aquariums? That's like more acoustic.
Yeah.
So I love that range of Coma Girls, but like you were saying, Hell House is almost, you know, designed to focus on the heavy stuff and pedal experimentation. I mean, your pedal board is a work of art these days. Holy shit, it's beautiful.
There's a lot of trial and error and like, yeah, a lot of money that I spent irresponsibly, but
Oh, dude, same. I know. Once you start building multiple pedal boards, like I think I saw you have a bass pedal board too. Like, what's wrong with us? We're just obsessed with pedals. But it's smart. It's like I say it to my girlfriend. It's like, well, it's like I want to have like, you know, the like Joy Division New Order Peter Hook bass sound and like have the, you know, the chorus on the bass. My friend Matt Hoffman, who recorded with Christian and Siobhan and I last time, yeah, the Taco Goblin. I think I've put you guys in touch before.
yeah,
He uses like this Sans amp pedal. Have you seen? I'm sure
yeah,
you might even
Sans
have
Amp, yeah.
Sans amps. They're so good. Like the way he rigged that up on his bass rig is just incredible. I put together like a small like secondary pedal board because I've been putting together a band in Denver. So like, you know, like having multiple pedal boards for multiple players too. So
I have to like keep myself from because I have like a small board that I use for bass and like I use it for like, smaller things. Like if I'm just playing guitar, I just want like a distortion pedal and a reverb pedal and like a
sure.
chord pedal, and that's it.
Mhm.
But I have to stop myself from being like, well, I could start, I want to get this Chase Bliss pedal and this other crazy $1,000 thing, and it's like, nah.
Yeah, dude, the Chase Bliss stuff, all the Strymon stuff. I mean, there's just so much out there. I've been kind of a sucker for like finding like random little delays. I love delay units, period. And like there's so many weird ones out there that it's almost like you can sample and loop if you know, turn the feedback like all the way up and like, you know, mess with the speed. It's like you can just make the weirdest things. You know, obviously we're both big DL4, you know, fans. So you've got the new one. How's that one working out for you?
Yeah, the Mark II. It's cool. I mean, I really like how it has the two button aux switch where you can send it from delay mode into looper mode and back with just like a touch of a button, because when I first got it, I would be like, playing with it, and then I'd bend over and switch it to looper mode, like when it's at 6 o'clock, and then I'd to bend over and do it back, and uh, yeah, that's kind of like the center of my board because I like to record shit of like, with like the reverse and like the dirt and like having the H9 before that in the chain, in the mood, and then sending it into the DL4 and then being able to loop it and then sending that loop into like microcosm, whatever, the reverbs that follow it.
Is that kind of how you got that swell at the beginning of 175th Street by Hell House?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's like it's recorded into a DL4 and then reversed and then sent through the microcosm.
Sounds so beautiful. Like seriously, it's just dreamy. The whole record too. I mean, 11 Candles obviously is like that song will make you cry. It's just, and I think a lot of it are these like soundscapes. It's like so it's like oceans of sound, and it's interesting how just as like a lyric or a melody will pull on, you know, like a heartstring or an emotion. Like I feel like, you know, the pedals really do that for us as well too. So it's interesting, you know, maybe not for other people, but for us pedal nerds, I'm fascinated by it. I was curious now that you're getting more equipment because I saw you have like you've got like the OP1 now, which is sick. You've got the MPC, you've got turntables, you know, you're kind of like sampling, building beats as well as, you know, playing every instrument. You've got an omnichord. Have you thought about doing like Coma Girls sets like by yourself, like having like the Hell House band and then like I mean I know you've done like acoustic sets and whatnot, but like I mean sampling and looping, live looping is so fucking hard, but you know, you could do it. You could like
For sure.
actually like do it, you know.
I'm very intrigued and interested about the possibilities of that. It's like I just feel like I'd be like a sound guy's worst fucking nightmare, where he's like, "Oh, it's just me," and he's like, "Oh, cool," and then I come in with, my pedal board looks like I'm carrying around a ventriloquist dummy or something. I'm like a magician, and then I have, I'm really big on like this idea, right, of like I'm gonna have a table, like I'll have the board here and I'll have a table here, and
Yeah.
that'll have like, the MPC and the OP1 and sampling stuff and drum machine kind of shit. I could cue that and then play guitar while singing with the pedal board. And it's just like, dude, I'm not a fucking octopus. Like, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. I've also had that dream for a long time, and I've had homies who do it. My buddy Randy Chabot, he records as Deastro, Deastro. He's been with Ghostly International for a long time, and like, I like used to get reviews on Pitchfork and got to properly tour Europe and everything like a decade ago. And he had an incredible band, but he also would do shows by himself. And another dude, he goes by Shigeto. I don't know if you've heard of Shigeto, but super dope.
Yeah.
Zach Saginaw out of Michigan, kind of like loop stuff, and then start playing drums to it, which is like another level of difficult. But another homie, Robbie Ritter, um, he's now in Miami. He records as Diamond Girl. We used to tour way back in the day, and he had that set up. He used to bring like an acoustic wedge with him to every show, even when we were doing like house shows. So then he could like, he had like, I have one too, the little Casio SK1. So he'd like loop that and then like loop like an MPC and then like start like, playing guitar and like you said, basically octopus style. And it's super dope if you have the table and the talent to pull it off, the patience, but yeah, it's also difficult. Sometimes being in a band is more fun that way.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, right? Is like, that sounds well and good, but so much could go wrong. It's like when I play a show, I want it to be fun. That's like the idea of like pulling up with my friends and just like being really loud and like having it be fun is a lot more exciting to me than the idea of like I'm gonna bring all this gear and like, try not to, piss off the sound guy too bad and like try to pull it off. The idea of like, oh, I'm going to try to pull this off live. I mean, I think here at home, I need to get more like in the box. Like I've been avoiding that um, with all this like analog style gear. And that's something like, Coma Girls has kind of been like a studio project because there's just so much going on in the record. Like I've played shows, right, where I'll have a pedal steel player and a keys player and two guitars. It's a lot to like loop people into doing it for a couple shows in LA, and it's always been this rotating cast, right, for Coma Girls to support me and help me pull it off live. And it's like more trouble than it's worth a lot of the time, which is why I end up playing these kind of like intimate personal shows where it's like I can like strip everything away and just have it be like the song presented like in a very basic format. But yeah, Hellhouse is exciting in that way because it's like, we can just show up and be a band and have fun. And yeah, I have enough going on with the pedal board to where it's like, I don't want to sing. I sing sometimes, but it's like, I don't want to be doing that and singing because it's just like nerve wracking, you know?
Yes. Oh, 1,000%. It's so much. I mean, I think about that all the time because as our pedal boards grow, it's just such a division of attention when you're thinking of the lyrics you have to sing and the chords you're playing and what your pedals configurations are doing, what your feet's doing, like your fingers, and then like not just your lyrics, but like where you have to put your voice and like get your face to the microphone. It's like like you said, octopus already just, singing, playing guitar and doing pedal work sometimes.
Absolutely. That you just nailed it, right? Where it's like, yeah, you just nailed it. Like trying to have a microphone that'll have a boom that reaches past my pedal board
Yes,
with
dude.
like a sandbag on it.
I just
You know what I
switched
mean?
to yeah, the sandbags are crucial. I just switched to this one and I was having such difficulties with it at first, but then my girlfriend was like, it rotates like that. So now I like actually have it on its side, like stretching over the pedal board, you know.
Yeah.
But then like it's like sideways, like kind of like under me. which so then I can be like singing into it and looking down at the
I
same.
always do that too. Like people usually have their mics like this, and I always point mine upside down like that so I can be over it. I just kind of like the way that feels more. But definitely, like when I was doing this Hell House stuff live, I realized that like as much as I'm playing guitar, I'm really playing the pedal board, right? It's like that's the. Sorry, I live next to an airport, so there's like planes to go over.
Oh, I can hear you fine. Sounds good.
Okay, cool. But it's very much like you're playing the piano with your feet kind of thing, and that's the palette, right? The sound palette is on the ground, and I'm very much playing the pedal board, and the guitar becomes like secondary to the pedals, and the idea of like what I want to make the guitar do sonically is controlled by the pedal board and not like necessarily what I'm playing on guitar. And like there are some like lead lines and like solo-y bits and like like interesting chords that aren't uh as remedial as just playing like power chords or something, but it's very much like centered. My focus is on the ground, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, I'm sure like I don't know if you ever seen that documentary. It was like Jack White and Jimmy Page and The Edge,
Yeah.
and it might get loud. And I know a lot of people were like roasting the clips of The Edge because like his pedal board is making this like beautiful sound, and then he'd be like, "I'm actually just playing this," and it's like two or three chords. But like that's kind of the trick, and like that's what you're saying. And I read the book, I think it's called "Set the Boy Free" by Johnny Marr, the guitarist from the Smiths, and like that's why I love that band, or the guitar sounds and like he's like doing so much. I mean, like in his like rhythm parts, and then he'll layer it obviously too. But like he had a section in the book where even in the 80s he was like getting so into like the types of amps and the pedals. He said, the term like producing with your feet, essentially, like, and that what's the how soon is now, that like crazy like it's like almost like a rockabilly riff, but it's like mega like tremolo, like and they said they like set up like 4 amps in like the corner of the studios and just like for like a whole night just like got that sound like tremolos like in sync, like and setting up mics all over. And he said he was getting like punching in different configurations for different layers with the pedal board even back then. So it's like you said, it's weird when it feels like it's all on the ground, but you could also put it on a table, I guess. And it's fascinating like what you can do with sound, like those are they called rainbow machines or whatever? Like what the fuck is that pedal even? Like what does that even do?
Yeah. Well, that's funny you bring that up because that was kind of like the beginning of this whole like journey with the guitar pedals, right? For me, where it's like, for instance, like you just brought up It Might Get Loud. Is that what it's called? And I remember seeing that when I was like, much younger. I guess it's been out for a while. And like really like, like skimming past all the Edge stuff where I was like, Jimmy Page is dope. And like, I feel like Jack White kind of like commands attention in that because he's doing like shit that is like, I'm playing this fucking string that's whatever, like
Sure.
um but the guitar pedal thing wasn't interesting to me. I was like, that guy sucks at guitar, like fuck this, like like I don't give a shit about your delay pedal. And I've really like the I guess the turning point for all of that was like, a lot of people like watch Netflix all day or whatever. And like, I have a job as a caregiver where I spend a lot of my time like at home and I'm playing guitar and I'm exploring music. And I spend a lot of time on YouTube, right? I have like YouTube Premium because I can't watch ads. So I'm like on YouTube all the time, whether it's like
YouTube
watch.
University.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've taught myself how to do a lot of stuff via YouTube. And,
Or
I was watching some Steve Albini thing because I was just like watching like producers in their studio and how they achieve different sounds, and he was like kind of like rating things, and he was like, this pedal good for studio, good. And it was the Rainbow Machine from Earthquaker Devices.
nice. Wow.
So, and Christian was one of my we used to play Coma Girl shows, and I've played acoustic guitar since I was 12 years old. That's always what I've been like, a pop guy, an acoustic singer songwriter. I write pop songs on acoustic guitar. I like Oasis, you know what I mean? And that was kind of what I was doing. until, we would play live and Christian would be like, I have like an SD1, which is like an overdrive pedal that I would kind of just like dime out for distortion. And then I had like a Holy Grail. And we would have parts in the song where I'd just leave the Holy Grail on the whole time, and then a part that would get kind of shoegazy, and I would bend over and like turn it up all the way and just kind of create this like wall sound.
Yeah.
And Christian, he's a producer, and he's just like, dude, that doesn't sound good. And I'm like, oh, it sounds so big and full. And he's like, dude, it just sounds like, you know,
My favorite part about Christian is that he's the nicest dude in the world who doesn't pull punches, and he's like so honest, and I love him for that. Like he's such a real one.
but I would just be kind of like, strung out on drugs and just like, can you like turn knobs on my amp until it sounds good? I'm not like an electric guitar player. And so I acknowledged that. And he was like, dude, just go buy a rat pedal. Like it's a good distortion pedal. Like just go, Christian loves rats. He has like all the ones, the different
Yeah,
chips.
it's the Proco one, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah,
The LM, whatever. I'm not a rat guy, but I have a rat on my board, but it's like barely ever used. But he put me onto the rat pedal, and so I started using that, and I noticed that it sounded better than like distortion sounds that I had gotten. So that was kind of like turning my head in that direction. But so when I saw that thing about Steve Albini being like this, and he's making him make all these crazy sounds, and I was like, how the fuck does that work? Like you just said, and so I just like went to a guitar center and I was like, do you guys have a rainbow machine? And they're like, yeah, we have a used one. And they handed it to me. And then, I'd use space echoes in the studios, like with Thomas Dolis from the OCs, who like did an EP for me for Coma Girls. And we used to space echo on Wedding Roses. That's what that is at the end. There's like pedal steel, and then he's kind of playing the space echo. Thomas is. Um,
those things are so sick.
those, I mean, the OG ones, yeah, or the chorus one, they're incredible. And so I was like, I saw the Boss, the RE2, whatever it is, that's like, in a stomp box form. So basically, I took some patch cables and a couple one spots, and I went into their little demo room, and made a bunch of noise with this like space echo pedal and the rainbow machine. And 3 hours later kind of emerged from this like guitar center in the valley, and I was like, I guess I'm gonna buy these. And I bought them and I took them home, and yeah, that was kind of like, that was the beginning of like Hellhouse, really, because like I bought those two, and then I was like down the rabbit hole, or I was like, what else can I make a
Totally.
guitar sound like?
Yeah, dude, that's been my goal for a long time. That's funny because I was gonna ask you like what was the first pedal that you got, and that's I feel like that was the beginning of the rabbit hole for me. I just had like I was in like a post-punk band, the Kodaks that Laidlaw was in for a while too, and we kept, pretty bare bones boards, really like, just like reverb, distortion, delay. But I had a DD3, which I still have. I love the DD3 because I think I was mentioning this earlier. Like some of the units, like before, especially before they got really obsessed with t putting tap tempo and everything, they like have these weird, feedback settings where you can like you said, like kind of like dime it out and like almost like get a chop, like a sample and like loop it and get weird with it. So that was kind of my like, portal into like, whoa, like what can you do with sound? Like you can capture sound and warp it and manipulate it and loop it and reverse it. And, so then I think I got a chorus pedal, that like vintage Ibanez one, which I don't know where it is now and it kills me. And then I got like the DL4, and that was just like, I love this band called Ambulance Ltd, Ambulance Limited. They're like half Oasis, half Elliott Smith, basically, with a lot of like healthy dose of spiritualized in there. But they only made like a couple records in the 2000s. But I saw them open for the Killers, like when we would have been like 13 or something. And they just blew my mind because they were doing all this like incredible ambiance, and like there's like versions of their songs that are like the single cut, but then they have the extended album versions that have these beautiful like reverse guitar intros and swells and stuff. And yeah, it really is kind of like magic and like alchemy with sound, like opening portals, and it's weird, interesting.
100%. That's really cool. What you just said is, I mean, the portal, right? Like the moment where you stick your hand through the mirror, and you're like, oh, what's on the other side of this, and then you can kind of, into the wardrobe or whatever with it. And I've definitely, spent 1,000 hours at least like with this pedal board, just being like, you know what are what can be accomplished. And I've always liked when bands had like, I grew up kind of playing in hardcore bands when I was young, when I was like 16, 17, and I always thought it was cool when someone had like, a little sampler that they would just hit and it would play the, movie quote, and then they go into like some breakdown thing. And I always thought that kind of elevated a performance. And even still, it's like, I played bass with this band Ivy Hollow, like covering bass duties for a show. And there's this band Essencer that played, and they had like, a thing. The guitar player had something on his board where he would hit it, and it would do these interludes between songs. And a lot of bands do that, and I love that. And I like the idea of it not just being a sample where you hit a button, like where it's just in the loop pedal, and it might be easier like that. But I like the idea of just like kind of creating loops and just having them tie together songs. I think that like elevates a live performance a lot. It's really like interesting.
Totally.
Um,
I've been trying
yeah.
to get better at that for like 10 years. My dad was always like, fuck stage banter. And he'd always like say I'm spending too much time staring at my pedals too. But then when you get that kind of effect, like you said, like if you're live looping or just kind of creating an ambiance that links songs together, like that's amazing. That band Ambulance I saw really blew my mind in that way. Like, and they were opening for the Killers, but like the Killers were like just blowing up and like they did not have their shit together yet. Like, so like I feel like Ambulance kind of like outstaged them in that show in that way, but it's
Cool.
to each their own, everybody has an opinion or whatever, but yeah, that
I
I
th-
yeah, go ahead.
no, I think like I relate to what you just said, because it's like I've always had like crutches, right? Especially for like playing live, where I'd be like, well, this is a punk band, like that's what I'd always say. Is like, even with like, my main project, Coma Girls, which is like very much so like not a punk band. It has a punk ethos to it, but it's like the songs are very poppy. The sonic element to it is very like pushing envelope. For me personally, it's like I'm always trying to like do different things with that sound. And it was just a crutch. Like I would just say that like this is a punk band. It's supposed to be like kind of messy, and like it's not supposed to be perfect. And I really grew out of that and became more interested in like I like I've worked in music venues for a long time now. I worked at the Echo and Echo Park, and now I work at the Regent Theater.
Oh, word.
I'm doxxed. You can come find me at the bar. And I see a lot of bands come through, and like, 90% of the time it's not stuff that I like, but they're people that are pulling off a stage show very well. And whether they're using Ableton, or they have like a man behind the curtain doing stuff, or a good sound guy, or they kind of had their shit together. And like, I typically like, there's a lot of punk bands that I love. And like, I grew up in Atlanta, where there's like a really great punk scene. Um, in LA, it's like I'm much more uh interested in bands that are like doing it well, you know. And so I don't want to just, be pulling up at a show and be like, we're a punk band, and like trying to pull it off. And like I'd like to, be in the studio. I love recording with Christian, and like, I've kind of started building a studio here. Um because I want things to sound good, and I'm tired of like being immature about it, and just like having this like, brazen attitude about production, or playing live, or whatever it is.
No, that's really well said. I totally agree. And I feel like it's almost like a necessary crutch when you're young because you're like still figuring it out and you're like, oh, like I'm in my teens or my 20s and like I'm touring and I don't really know what I'm doing, but like it's a punk band or it's a post-punk band or it's this, it's an indie band, and like I remember sleeping on floors with like cockroaches and you just like kind of make excuses for it or like showing up later than you should for shows, just like rookie like, shit that I like makes me cringe now,
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is like also wanting it to sound good and realizing like most people won't even listen to something. They won't even give it the time of day if it doesn't sound up to a certain snuff, which like that's never been how I've been because like I love the Velvet Underground. Like I love that band Girls a lot. I love that band like Smith Westerns and like some of their shit sounded terrible and I loved it, like Ariel Pink back in the day before he was canceled, a lot of like the lo-fi stuff. And now it's more of like an aesthetic choice and people call like Mac DeMarco lo-fi and it's like that dude is spends an incredible amount of time with like a wild like analog setup and crazy signal chain like doing what he's doing. I mean Christian is like a scientist. He's like a wizard. Your friend Wyatt too seems incredibly talented and it's definitely a journey, but it's I don't know, it's hard because then it's like you said, it's more time, it's more money and then like people think you're crazy, but then the product, it's like I often think of how songs will outlive us, like we could like get hit by a car tomorrow and then like whatever we've made is here and I don't know if any of that really matters like in the long-term scheme of things like in terms of legacy and like we don't have kids or anything and maybe we're heading into the apocalypse right now, who knows, but I still want to believe that like what we're doing, means something, even if it's only to us. I think other people when they hear it, like, I mean, I listened to a lot of your music before we became closer, and like I was just like, this dude gets it. Like, I fucking love your lyrics, love your melodies, love all the sounds. And then, it's so cool now that I've got to work with Christian and like, most people in music, like, I think there's a default of like an ego. Like, you have to have confidence. So it's like some people just end up being egoic. And I just love working with Christian because he's so not that. He's like a man's man, like going through the world, like being kind and humble, but being real. And I just want to like surround myself with people like that who are focused on art and being a good person and not getting caught up in the bullshit, basically. I
Yeah, I mean, Christian's like my best friend, and as much as he's like a great sound engineer, like he'll be the one to get the levels and turn the knobs and like make it sound good. Like he's a great producer. He has a really good ear for music. He works really well with other people. I trust him like infinitely, So it's funny because he's the one that kind of like rang me in. It's like all the Coma Girl stuff. I'll be just throwing out darts, and he's catching them in butterfly nets. And with this Hellhouse thing, he saw the board and he was like, I mean, okay, man, like,
Dude, I can hear his
imagine
voice.
this is
See
gonna
it.
sound like fucking soup, And I showed up and I had spent a lot of time with it, and we tracked like this whole EP live, with like minimal overdubs and we were tight. We'd been rehearsing a lot. And so Christian, even after we recorded, he was like, dude, I was like a little, suspicious at first, but you really like surprised and impressed me when you came in with the board because it's like everything's not on at once. I've got like 20 fucking pedals on this board. They're not, it's choices, and it's never more than like two or three pedals on at the same time unless there's just like a total freak out part. So,
It's like
um,
painting. Like it always reminds me of painting. Like when you have like the color palette and you're like, okay, what am I gonna like mix together, Like so that's so dope just to hear how the different projects come into being and like the process because like it is a lot like pouring your time and energy into it and again, the lyrics on your stuff, I was saying to you earlier, I think, Coma Girls and Hell House. I mean, stuff that Christian writes too, stuff that Kai has written, but the stuff you have written, it's just beautiful stuff, dude. And it's like really like hits to the core of you. I mean, like I was like, obsessed with the Skyboxer EP when it first came out, listened to it all the time. And then same thing with the Crystal Pistol because I was like just going through like a lot of shit. And it like came out like right before I turned 33. And like there's like that whole, it's like the whole, I don't know, there's a lot. And I've told you I've been working on a book series since I was like 12. And like the main characters, like some of them have these like really dope crystal pistols, which is just so funny. So man, if the books get published and the movie adaptations happen, like 1,000%. The song "The Crystal Pistol" by Coma Girls will be in that, like, because there's just like, it's like a magic gun type of thing that like just like like can have different like elemental shots type of thing. And so like it would be so dope to have like a scene like where you don't really know what the gun does yet, and then it just like explodes and like that, like how what the song does. Like it was just like really weird that like again, like we are have met through friends of friends and like haven't even got to hang out in person that much. And it was so funny like when that record came out, like I was just like, Jesus, dude, like I feel like you're speaking directly to me with these songs. And my girlfriend Cindy too is like obsessed with that record. It's like a flawless album, dude. And like your output is really, really beautiful. And I just want to help in any way I can because I feel like, your stuff, Christian stuff, like the Hell House stuff, it's really, really dope. And y'all should definitely be proud of it. It's really, really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I really am, especially with this record. It's like um I like what you were saying about ego and stuff, where it's like for me, I always had something to say, right? And I always felt like I had a voice that was important and I needed to be heard. And like this idea of like uh a song can change the world and this like and I've really like flipped that in the past year where it's like, dude, I don't know. Like I don't really have like I don't have that immediacy and that urgency about like I need to say this or my skin's gonna fall off or something, and I've become a lot more interested in like sound rather than like the message of this song or like this like idea of who I am as a person and getting my identity, being caught up in being an artist and like how different I am. Where it's like, dude, I'm just like you. I'm just like everyone else. Like I'm just a guy. And that's been very like a freeing experience because it allows me to not get caught up in this idea of that like I have something to prove. It's like that's been really freeing. And like you were talking about you know a movie, and it's like I've been doing Coma Girls for 10 years. Like the self-titled record came out when I was living in Atlanta in 2015, so it's like the 10-year anniversary this year of this band. And this band it's just me and whatever I say it is at the time. And
Yeah.
I got paid more than I've ever been paid in music for getting a song on in a movie called Plight
Oh
that
yeah.
my friend Matt Boda directed. And that was a moment also very recently where I was like, oh, like I could just like be in the studio like making songs with my friends and like get paid for it instead of like sleeping on couches or living out of vans or whatever. So that's very appealing to me as like I'm turning 36 next month. And yeah, like I really I'm like okay taking the back seat. It's like, yeah, I'm an artist, but like I'm really just interested in music. And like especially with sampling now, I've like become obsessed with like MPC world and that whole thing. And I wouldn't have seen myself going in that direction ever. It's like I don't care how they made that beat. Like whatever. And now I'm very interested. I'm hearing music differently.
Well,
It's a lot less about like, oh, this cool lyric that like had this zing to it, and then this like this idea of like I don't give a fuck, and like this kind of like immature framework to a song. And yeah, I don't know. I'm changing a lot. It's exciting, I guess.
I'm
Like to
excited to see what you crank out. I mean, it's so funny because it's like I always wanted to be a musician, but I just felt like I would never be talented enough. And like I grew up with sisters who were always just kind of like, don't embarrass us, And my mom was in like a girl group in the 70s, like with like acoustic guitars and girls singing like covers of like the band America and stuff like that. So
cool.
I think she was just kind of like, don't do it, it'll break your heart. Like it's a crushing dream and like, blah blah blah. And eventually I just like couldn't not, take a crack at it because I was so obsessed with music. And, I remember like hearing that band clap your hands, say yeah, like forever ago. And like I love that record, but I just remember hearing that dude's voice and being like, if this guy's doing this and like he's doing it seriously, like fuck it. Like I don't like I could sound worse than him and like it's okay. Bands do that, you know. So I don't know. Eventually it was, songwriting. It was like a band and like I bought the guitar and then I just like, started songwriting and like learning chords, but I've never had like, really like official lessons, just like homies showing me chords here and there, but mainly just self-taught. Like you said, like we have to lock ourselves in these rooms and just like record and spend hours doing it. And I think eventually my dad used to DJ, so then I was like, yeah, I can DJ. Like homies were starting to get paid like money for like plugging in their phones like at like a coffee shop, and DJing, And so I was like, okay, I have like records, like I can actually DJ. So I started DJing and I moved to the UK and then moved back and I was like DJing weddings during the pandemic, which is weird, but that got me really obsessed with like like how I could like blend music and then that got me obsessed with like beats. And then once you dive into it, it's just like like the beats that like RZA, like RZA produced like 36 Chambers, like that whole record by Wu-Tang is like incredible. And there's like a show that like delves into it a little bit, like a new like Wu-Tang show.
On
Wu-Tang's
Hulu. I saw that with the kid from Moonlight.
such a good actor. That kid is so good. I saw a Whitney Houston movie recently where he played Bobby Brown and he was so good.
Hilarious.
Yeah, but I mean, we talked a little bit about Ninth Wonder. I mean, I'm from Detroit, so Jay Dilla is like, a god there. And I love New Ace, the Dilla of Japan. He was like one of the, I mean, he was like the godfather of the chill beats movement now, but yeah, I never thought I would be like making beats either, but I'm excited to hear, how you can incorporate that, especially artists I love like Beck have these incredible like Dylan, or like, Sunshine folk records and then these like really pastiche. I love the Dust Brothers. They did like the Fight Club soundtrack and
Yeah.
a lot of back
Yeah.
records, Beastie Boys. It's just a lot. I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about the evolution of like you're from Georgia originally and you said you were playing in punk bands and like yeah, when did you said Coma Girls officially started in 2015, so it's the 10-year anniversary. But yeah, like even like the evolution of the genre, I was wondering if you could talk like about yeah, like growing up in the East, moving to the West, and then I feel like I wrote down like swamp punk for like the sound of like old Coma Girls, and then you like moved west, and there was like beautiful steel guitar. There used to be like horns, and then there was like steel guitar, and then there's like some shoegaze mixed with the folk, and now you've got like some like R&B, like Al Green, John Mayer type songs going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. That's okay.
I have
Yeah,
a
shit.
problem.
Where do I start? It's like I started playing music when I was very young because my sister had a guitar. And I just thought it looked cool. Like she had this like pink kind of toy guitar and I peed in it, like into the hole of it. And I got in a lot of trouble for it, you know.
Music career beginning story ever.
How it all started. I like found this guitar in her closet and I peed into it and my mom freaked out, and then uh my sister got a bass guitar that was like an old like, pawn shop. It was called a Hondo.
Okay.
And I basically stole it from her. I was a handful as a kid, if you can't tell. And like I stole it from her, and she was my mom had she was a dance teacher, right? So there's Michael Jackson and Rod Stewart and Achy Breaky Heart. I'm from the South, so Dolly Parton. Like my grandmother was really into country music, and my mom was a dance teacher, so a lot of like Ace of Base, Paul Abdul, like kind of thing, and
Ace of
I just loved. I would turn the records backwards on her record player and make them sound all crazy. And I stole my sister's bass and stole all of her like Muddy Banks of the Wishka and like the Smashing Pumpkins box set, and became really obsessed with like Silverchair and like was trying to learn these songs on this bass guitar with like no teacher, no tablature, no nothing, just like didn't even know how to tune it, and just trying to play along to it as like an 11-year-old kid, right?
Yeah.
So that's like kind of how it started. And then I got an acoustic guitar. I had an uncle um, who was very into like Leonard Skinner and the Allman Brothers kind of thing. And I would go to my grandmother's house. I spent a lot of time there because my parents worked a lot as a kid when I was a kid. And I would, he'd be like, Christopher, come here, listen to this Leonard Skinner song, and I would just be sitting there with an acoustic guitar, kind of like
Right.
letting him teach me like little things, but he never really taught me that much. He was like, you know, uh, kind of out to lunch. He dealt with like schizophrenia and stuff.
Sure.
And so I just loved music, and I guess it started with me like realizing like the freshman 15 chords and like, oh, I can play a song. Like if I just play G, C, and D or whatever as I'm like, 12, 13 or something. I started like writing songs and was really into Napster. Like that was a huge thing for me. It's like Napster, which then became Kazaa for me, which is like LimeWire.
Yeah. I used LimeWire.
So I would like watch music videos all day, like whether it was like, Deftones or Taproot or like whatever was cool at the time. I was like 13. Um, and becoming obsessed with music videos, which was then 120 minutes and Headbangers Ball and staying up late to see like I liked Slipknot when no one knew who they were, and I was like this freak kid in Georgia, and it's like you gotta stay up till midnight to see Dig on Headbangers Ball because Mudvayne looks weird, and like Marilyn Manson, like Sweet Dreams, just being like, what is this? My mom's like, what are you doing, Mike? And like
So
throwing CDs out of windows and shit, like on car trips. And
classic.
so that's like kind of how it started, right? But then when I moved to Atlanta, I guess I was like 17 or 18, and I moved to the city and I lived in Little Five Points.
Mhm.
And there was a very like blossoming like there's a great punk scene, but the garage rock scene was kind of a thing, right? And so I loved the Black Lips, and I would like see Cole
Deer
around. I used
Hunter.
to
I like
deliver
that.
Chinese
Heroes.
food to him, and he was always nice to me. And I was like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
Atlanta has a thing, and then became obsessed with Deer Hunter and like loved all Bradford's records. And
Heroes, dude. Yeah. They
yeah, like,
they record with a homie in well, mainly Lockett records the Lotus Plaza stuff with a homie in Detroit named Chris Colte, who also is friends with Shigeto. And I think he like tours with them and does their sound and shit too. I also got obsessed with them. Like I loved Black Lips, and then I didn't even know they were like homies, and I was like, oh, that's so dope. But yeah, I mean, Deer Hunter, Grizzly Bear, Animal Collective, like everything happening in that, like, and MGMT, like all that shit happening was, there was so many genres happening, but you were right in it in Atlanta, like at the peak of it.
yeah, no, exactly. And so that was very inspiring to me. And it was like I said, pop music like a punk band, or it's like, if you watch, you know, uh, a lot of these garage rock bands play, it's like they sound like dog shit and it's awesome. Like no one cares. And it's like, it's much more about, this like fun attitude you're bringing to good songs, like oldies inspired. I was always really into oldies because of my mom being a dance teacher and my dad's from Jersey. So girl groups and Rat Pack stuff is always on rotation. And so I felt like there was like a crack there to be opened. And that's like how Coma Girls started, right? Is I was playing bass in this other band that was kind of like a psych band kind of thing with my friend Chandler, and he's like an incredible keys player. And it was obviously like the best person in the band, and I was like, whenever shit kind of went sideways with that band, I was like, me and you are gonna start a band,
Yeah.
and that's how Coma Girls started. And it was me and him and my really good friend Rocky, who's I kind of like was like, "Dude, you have to play bass in this band." And he was just like, "I'm like working at this donut shop and I'm trying to start a food truck and I don't have time." And I was like, "Okay." And then I made the like first Coma Girls demo and I showed it to him and he's like, "Okay, I'll play bass. Like, this is great. I really want to be a part of this." And then the drummer that I grew up playing with my neighbor, who is a really incredible drummer, and I kind of looped him into doing it. And that's like how it started, right? And the entire idea of it was to, play really poppy music like a punk band, kind of in the same vein as like, I was into J Retard and Goner Records and the Gories and stuff, but I really wanted it to be like more pop,
Mhm.
but less garagey, but still with the punk ethos, and kind of mix like hi-fi and lo-fi. And I feel like I've kind of continued that. That's always kind of been the return to center that happens with Coma Girls is like I want it to sound dope and like DIY, but I want it to sound good and I want it to like move people and I want the songs to be really like sensible and yeah, so then to get to your question finally, like, when I came from Atlanta to Los Angeles, I moved here with a backpack and an acoustic guitar. I didn't know anybody. And I started playing bass for my friend Leon Knight, who was like, at the time doing like a real like funk thing. And I grew up playing bass as my first instrument, so I can like play slap bass like pretty well, and like I was playing bass in that band and you know, was really like listening to more country music and kind of into I always really liked Ryan Adams, which I know he's not doing much currently, but
Those older records, like is it the Heartbreaker record or whatever?
Heartbreaker, Easy Tiger, like those the early records, I loved Ryan Adams,
Yeah.
right? So I always kind of had this idea of like I'm an acoustic guitar guy, like maybe I should lean more in like an alt country direction, or just Americana. Like I don't get caught up in labels and genres. I think that's important to talk about. It's like I don't give a fuck. Like people are like, what kind of music do you play? It's like such a hard question for me to answer.
Agree. It's so nebulous and like all the like genres and subgenres and like I remember one time like my band because like I had a punk band, the Kodaks, that was like the post-punk band, like obsessed with the Strokes, the Clash, Television, and then had like more of like our like Grizzly Bear, Deer Hunter band that was called Shady Groves. And that was kind of more leaning into like yeah, like there were like some Wilco songs, but then there was also some like, indie pop songs, and then also some like heavier, weirder experimental ones. So we got a write-up one time that called us genre chameleons. And I've actually gotten that as in a Quells write-up too. So it's like that's something I aspire to lean into. Like you said, like, all genres are just labels, man. They're just boxing you in.
Hell yeah.
I think it's dope that you've kind of really, explored past that. Because again, I think really my intro is the Skyboxer EP. And then I went back and listened to Car Alarms, which is totally different vibe. It's so good, but so different worlds. And then I found the singles that I was like, okay, this is the breadcrumb trail, like Crown and what's the other one that you did too?
Smoking Gun.
Dude, they're so good, Chris. Those songs are beautiful, dude. Like that is so is and then plus the four from Skyboxer. That whole like yeah, it's kind of like got that like Wilco vibe. What was that other band that was like blowing up? Can't remember. Like kind of like Wilco Jr. for a minute that was like blowing up. They did a good audio tree session. But yeah, I love all the different instruments you brought in and now like, I'd said like Al Green, John Mayer, but I think it's the second John Mayer album. He pretty much like recorded like, like in Pro Tools, like by himself in New York, and then like went to a studio and like did horns and stuff. But I think it's called Heavier Things by John Mayer. That was like the first three albums he put out were like, and then he just like, was like with, Star, like really.
I like I said, I like pop music, heavier things, Continuum. I like Parachutes by Coldplay and Rush Blood to the Head. It's like I'm a pop guy. Like I love those records and I'd rather lean into that instead of shy away from it, as this like kind of alternative, musician or whatever. And yeah, I
Also,
mean, I
Blood in
think
the Seven Parachutes, like that's like core, you know. Mac DeMarco had talked about those records too. He's like, I put those up there with like Plastic Ono Band and like Abbey Road and shit. Like people can shit all over Coldplay now or whatever, but those first two albums, like the strings arrangements on those songs and like even their guitarists, like there's a lot of like reverse guitar, like cool shit and like you said, like we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but like the pop formula, you know, whether it's like Beatles and the Beach Boys or like Nirvana and the Clash and Joe Strummer or like Radiohead exploding it and then like building it back. But like, yeah, I mean, you had said something earlier, like, you know, the formula is there for a reason, or like, you know, these hits are hits for a reason. Like you listen to ABBA songs and it's like, it's just masterful. Like, you know, whether, I mean, everyone knows Dancing Queen, but like knowing me, knowing you, there's almost like, there's like harmonized like guitar leads in there and like just bizarre shit. And I love that you're starting to work with like horns and strings and all sorts of shit. So, how
no,
did,
yeah. You nailed it too with Radiohead because I loved Radiohead growing up, and now I think like a lot of people are kind of like it's like cool like Radiohead now, or it's like, I was always, I was obviously like raised on the Beach Boys and the Beatles and
name?
Temptations and
Oh,
all
time.
that the yeah, just like good pop music. And so I'd rather not shy away from that. But you're talking about this R&B stuff. So the new Coma Girl stuff, which isn't even out yet, which is exciting because I have a lot of material that I'm sitting on, right? And
I'm still in the beans. Sorry, Chris.
yeah, this is the leak. You guys get to. I mean, the past 2 years, my dad was dying for the past year, and then he finally passed away a few months ago, which has been like really freeing for me because we were really close, and it was hard, and struggled with that. And when he died, it felt like it was lifted, from me, and it's. I'm really excited to start putting out music again, and I have all of this music stockpiled. Like I've, like 3 records that I've been working on, like at the same time, the Hellhouse stuff and then Coma Girl stuff, and some of it's more like kind of straight, more I guess conventional like Coma Girl sound, where it's just kind of like good indie rock stuff. And then I met my friend Wyatt, um, and I had heard his stuff, and he put me onto D'Angelo, right? And that was kind of the start of this other thing that's happened with me for the past like year and a half, where like, he'd be like, "That was good, but can you play it like less white?" you know? And he grew up doing like he did sound for bands and queens and stuff. And, he's like this
Wow.
weird looking white kid with a mullet, that is from New York, but he knows this shit and like church chops and shit, and just like put me onto D'Angelo, and then that kind of like sent me down this rabbit hole of like old soul stuff. And I started like playing more like jazzy guitar. Like I was like, dude, I can, if a power chord makes me want to like shoot myself in the head. So I started experimenting a little more with like different chord modes and stuff. And I've played guitar for 20 years and I'm not great at guitar, for how long I've played, because I've always been more about the song. Because I play everything, right? Drums, bass, guitar, piano, whatever. And I was really like moved by the D'Angelo stuff and some other
Mhm.
black music, that I heard through him. And I've always loved hip hop. I grew up on like conscious hip hop and stuff. Like me and my best friend, who's been dead for a while now, but we used to listen to, Deep Puddle Dynamics and Merce and Anticon Records, this kind of like underground hip hop stuff. And so I don't know. I just like the past like year and a half, I've been listening to a lot of different music. Like I wasn't even really listening to a lot of like shoegaze music necessarily because I got into shoegaze really young. Like I remember I was obsessed with My Bloody Valentine before MBV came out. I was 15 or 16, blaring MPV when no one knew what it was. You know, anytime a shoegaze band played in Atlanta, you know, at like 529 or the Earl, like I was there and I didn't even care who it was. Like I just wanted to see someone that was making their guitar sound like that, you know. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know about reverse reverb into distortion and blah blah blah. Like I was just like, it was like a cool thing that like I felt hip to, that like no one else really was in Georgia. You go to these shows where there's like seven people there, you know, and you know I remember going to see Ringo Death Star play for like 10 people or something, you know. And so when MBV came out, that record, like I bought it and I like remember sitting there. I'd gotten a really horrible car accident where I like almost paralyzed myself, and I was just laying there for like months, like with a catheter in,
Oh,
listening to MBV really loud on vinyl.
good record. Yeah, I
Yeah,
also have it on wax. I have a copy of like a weird like print of Loveless too. So I just listen to them both constantly. I think it was Lost in Translation for me. There's like a scene that has Sometimes in it, and I was like, what is this music? So then that like led me to Loveless, but then I fell like deeper in love with Slow Dive, I feel like more. And then like I had already known a little bit of the Mojave 3 stuff or whatever, which is like more of their like old country stuff that like did between when Slow Dive broke up the first time and got back together. But yeah, I mean all of that stuff. And then I feel like it like even like led me to like Brian Eno and like weirder stuff because maybe because I grew up like between Flint and Detroit. It was just horrible music everywhere because like I grew up like between the trailer parks and like, the like gated communities, like, and it was just so weird because everyone was like only listening to like, Creed, Green Day, or Nickelback. So then like I remember my dad like got the first records by the Strokes and the Hives, and he like wasn't like that into it, even though he loved the White Stripes, but he's like, you might dig this. And like I like the White Stripes, but like I remember putting on those first records by the Hives and the Strokes. I was like, this is it. This is it. Like
I
sign me up.
loved the Hives. Yeah, growing up for
Vinny
sure.
Vidi Vicious, like that. The first two albums by pretty much all those bands, like Interpol, Block Party, The Strokes, like, a lot of those bands just killed it. This band called The Stills. I love this band called The Stills. But then like by the time I was like 15, like I had gone through like every decade of like white music, and like I was also always exposed to like Motown and stuff. I was like, I need to dig deeper into this, and fell head over heels in love with Marvin Gaye and Al Green. I mean, those are like my kings, I feel like. I've gotten really into like Bobby Womack and, other people like Lee Fields since then. I mean, just
Mhm.
incredible singers, and
Good
like
was great.
obviously Prince and D'Angelo. I mean, like all those records are just mind blowing. And then like being alive and in our age group during the ascent of Kendrick Lamar has been incredible too, because you're even kind of seeing this outline of like, okay, there's like pop crap, hip hop, just like there's, disposable like plastic,
Plastic.
shit of anything, but then you have like the really good shit, like, and I think I never had identified with hip hop early because we like were young when like Shake Your Tail Feathers came out, and it was like the Diddy era, and like everyone loved Eminem where I was from because I was like, grew up in Michigan, and I was like,
Of
yeah, it's
course.
fine. But once I got into like Tupac and Biggie and Nas and Wu-Tang, and we've talked about Ninth Wonder too, and like it's just such this like interesting, cycle of like how music is in conversation, with itself, like whether it's like British and American bands constantly influencing each other, whether it's like 60s, at different decades, shoegaze genres, whatever, or like black music, like interlacing itself into all aspects of culture, but then, like you hear something in a beat and then you're like, wait, what is that sample? And then you can find the song and then you're like, this is the coolest song I've ever heard. Like that whole aspect of crate digging just blows my mind. And Detroit is kind of like an epicenter for that. And I'll do, whenever I'm back home, I'll do like open decks and like, just bring some wax and throw down with some other DJs, and like usually the other DJs who play, some people will bring like, a rig and do like hyper pop or whatever, but like most people will show up with like wax and just be playing you like the deepest deep cuts, and because there was obviously like a lot of like white people trying to emulate black music even back then too, like so there's like some just incredible records just from all over the map. And now that bands like Krungbin have been blowing up, I feel like there's like a lot, like a bigger deep dive into like, Eastern music too. I mean, there's like the city pop craze, like the vaporwave craze, but then also like, Krungbin gets called like the Kill Bill band, but like that, like, I'm so into that like huge, wide sweeping array of genre hopping, and I feel like every new song you send me, whether it's Coma Girls or Hellhouse, I'm like, this is so dope. Like it's a totally new genre. I love that. So
Yeah. I mean, totally, right? Like I'm always listening to all different kinds of music, I guess. And like, like I was saying, it's like, while making this, shoegaze record, I wasn't even listening to shoegaze music, like, cause I feel like a lot of contemporary shoegaze bands, and not to be like
mhm,
knocking on it, but they're like, this whole like new gaze thing, that's like, oh, like this soul, the here come the records companies, to cash in on the TikTok thing, or whatever it is. And it's like, I love like these old, shoegaze bands. And I was listening to Jesus and Mary Chain when I was like 16, and Cocteau Twins and stuff. So it's like, um, yeah, I don't know. Like I was experimenting with guitar pedals, but I was listening to East Coast hip hop and old soul stuff, So the record sounds poppy,
yeah,
just like all my stuff, but yeah, I wasn't the influences weren't like, contemporary shoegaze bands. I can't even like name
yeah,
five off the top of my head because I'm pretty like out of that loop. But
sure.
maybe
Yeah,
there is a pocket for this this EP, this new project, Hellhouse.
sure.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I've talked to what's her name? She plays bass in is it Ringo Death Star, I think? She's really nice. She's married to that one dude who was like in Freaks and Geeks or whatever. He seems like a really nice guy. I think his name's Martin Starr, maybe. But she's really, really nice. And like I've like friends of friends have like played with them. And like that would be such a dreamy, like easy pair, like Hell House and Ringo Death Star would be fun. I mean, there's so many cool bands out there. Like you said, I'm not really into like the contemporary, like, and again, like there's bands like the Lemon Twigs like blowing up and they're kind of like 70s AM rock. I got to play with them like a couple years ago. Really nice guys. And then there's still like Jack White just had a record that blew up, and then you have like the hip hop feuds. So I feel like it's all coming full circle. I find myself listening to Outkast so often and like a lot of like old East Coast stuff too, and like again,
Yeah,
it's like
dog.
full circle because it's like these kind of like walls of sound, and like it's like hip hop, but there's so much like soul and R&B and funk, and like there's chops and samples, but then there's like incredible musicianship. Like they'll like have like a reverse conga part, but then have like the sickest bass line over it, and then like MPC a bunch of other shit in. And like that weaving of techniques is I feel like kind of like where you're at now in a way too. So I'm excited to see where you're
Yeah,
going. Maybe we'll
totally.
see one of those new songs as like the outro here. 'Cause
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what the future holds. I'm like, I've always got my hand in like five different pots at the same time. Even though I have two hands. But with Ringo Death Star, and that's a band that's been around for a lot. They've been a band for like at least 10, 15 years. I don't really know, but I was meaning more like kind of like these bands that have been conceived recently to kind of cash in or something. Like that's not what this is,
right.
and it's
Yeah,
very like
totally.
honest. But yeah, I mean, I was listening to Biggie and Nas and fucking old soul stuff while making this record, so maybe a little bit of that'll come through. I don't know. Um,
You've got like another Hell House single you're sitting on too, right? So there's like so much that you'll probably be releasing in the next like year or two, I'm sure. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, and my friend Annie Hardy, Full Psycho Records, we're kind of talking about teaming up for some Coma Girls stuff, and I want to keep working with Underflow. Obviously, you guys did a great job with this stuff, and like we really appreciate it. Like I was kind of in a spot where I had all this music to put out, and I didn't like something that I'm excited about for the future for myself is that like I've always avoided things where it's like, oh, I don't want to do production. Like I had like things I would say about it were like, oh, I'm the letter writer, not the mailman, because it would make me feel like
Yeah,
some
yeah,
type of way about it, like some kind of artist like thing to say. And like I'm so over all of that. It's like I'm very interested in production. I'm very interested in like learning now
yeah.
as a 36-year-old, musician. And when I did, the more recent stuff with Coma Girls with Wyatt, that was the cool thing, right? Is like, I was listening to a lot of different kinds of music and kind of getting put on by him. And I'd show up at his house and it was just him and his laptop and an Apollo. And I was like, this is it, And he's like, yeah, like play that riff that you're working on. And I played this little like jazz chord progression or something. He's like, cool. Like he's so good with Pro Tools. And where it's like he looks like a wizard to me, and it was all these plugins and this and that and da da da. And by the time we finished the first song, which is Candy Apple Red, which will probably be like the leading single for the new stuff, I was like, holy shit, this sounds like legit. Like this sounds great. And all we did was use an Apollo, and Pro Tools. And I was like, oh, that's intriguing to me because I used to think I needed this rack unit and this and that. And I was like, oh, dude. And my friend gave me an Apollo for free when he's clearing out his storage unit because is a very successful producer that's no longer making music. And he's just like, oh, he like kind of helped
Wow.
me up with some stuff. And I was like, I think I need to get in the box. Right. So that's kind of what I'm excited about. These things that I've been avoiding by kind of gaining interest in them. It has to be like my idea. Everyone's been telling me like, dude, just learn how to use Logic. And like, no, no, no.
I,
So
I'm the same way. I've like put it off forever and I learned so many different things like sampling and pedals and like, DJing and all this. And I really just need to go to YouTube University and like figure out mixing and bussing and like I have like all these mics and like, like I know like, Christian and Wyatt probably use nicer mics than we do too, but like, like when you record something with Christian, it just instantly sounds beautiful, and that's part of his wizardry. And like I try to record vocals and I'm like, this sounds horrible. Like I can play live, I'll play the same song live through my PA and I'll get like the vocal sound I want, and then I can't capture it in the box. It's just such a, I mean, people usually say vocals and drums, right? Like those are like, I've got like percussion here and like recording that stuff can be a nightmare too, like it's tough. It just takes time and dedication, I guess, but you're doing it, man. And I think your songs really have the potential to speak to people. And I always feel like, it could just be one song in a movie again, and then all of a sudden everybody discovers your back catalog of all the Coma Girls releases and the Hell House EP and everything. So just keep going, right?
no, for sure. And like, drum sounds are hard to get, but with the MPC, they're easy to get. And like, I have enough producer friends where I could be like, I could send something to Christian and be like, can you mix this? And I'll come in and do vocals. It's like, we'll see where it goes. But I definitely am like excited about, the music I already have made that I'm about to put out. And then the music that I haven't made yet, which I don't even know what that'll sound like.
Right.
We'll
Yeah,
see.
that's dope, man. Well, yeah, I'm excited too. I'm excited to hang out. Hopefully, when I'm gonna be back in LA in the end of May, so hopefully we can all hang out. And I mean, it'd be dope to start playing shows. I know Christian's kind of getting dies off the ground. I feel like we're all the same place. We all feel like we should be playing shows, but we all want it to be fun, like you said, and we're not trying to like force it. And it's a lot of work as like an adult with responsibilities. But I mean, I would totally play bass for Hellhouse, Coma Girls, dies, whatever. It would be so fun. I mean, Siobhan has played drums for all of us, so if he's willing to like do double duty or whatever, we could, put together a show at some point. It'd be fun. We could do one in LA and do one in Denver. Could be cool.
Yeah, I just got a new bass player for Hell House that is my friend Severin, who's killing it. So I'm really excited to. We're gonna play live, you
Dude,
know.
hell yeah. I
Um,
mean, Siobhan is just ridiculously good. And if you've got someone who can keep up with you and Siobhan, that's incredible. That's super
I want to
dope.
keep it simple, just we'll figure it out, But it's probably in like a month or so we'll start playing some shows since
Oh,
this
yeah.
record's out. So
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Christopher Spino, aka Coma Girls, aka Hell House. Is there anything else you want to share with the world before we wrap this up?
now just check out the new Hell House EP out on Underflow Records, and you stay tuned for the new stuff from Coma Girls coming out on Full Psycho.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, congrats, brother. Keep on grinding because it's beautiful music. And I think, even if it only connects with like a handful of people, I mean, you could be saving lives with these songs. Maybe a song won't change the world, but you can change one person's world. I mean, you changed my world with your songs, dude. They're beautiful. So I really appreciate
Thank
Christopher
you.
got me through some shit in 2023.
That's
So,
that's the goal. It's like there's so much music that saved my life as a teenager. So that's all I really care about is trying to reach people and move them in the same way that I've been moved by music. So yeah.
well, thank you. Thank you for sharing what you do, brother. And we'll do this again sometime. And congrats on the new release.
Thanks very much. Yeah, this is fun.